Brian Seltzer, Sixers.com. He's in Utah. The Summer League closes out the Utah portion of it tomorrow as the Sixers take on the Jazz. But more importantly, obviously the health of Ben Simmons looks A-okay. You know, the way this team has gone, Brian, with all the injuries the last couple of years, you see Ben kind of go down like a ton of bricks there and get walked off the floor. It's nice to see that he's okay.
Mike, no question about it, and it was great that when he spoke after the game on Monday, you could just tell with his body language that everything seemed like it was fine. It sounded like the Sixers, regardless of what happened on Monday, probably weren't even going to play him yesterday. They rested all 5 of their starters from the Monday night game, so none of them played. Simmons probably would have been included in that group, and after yesterday's game, it sounded like everything is good to go for tomorrow. The Sixers did some very light on-court work today. Nothing real strenuous or extensive, but Ben, in speaking to him yesterday, seemed to be in really good spirits. He was definitely staying hydrated and drinking lots of fluids, and the plan is for him to play tomorrow against the Jazz.
Now, Bri, you were calling the action for Sixers.com. You're up close and personal. Give us what a guy of that size looks like on the court. I mean, with his skill set and ability to pass the ball, how it looks to see it up close, a guy that big.
In one sense, it's just kind of really graceful, fluid, and smooth. And then when you see his size at 6'10", 240-some pounds, it's like a steam locomotive rolling down the tracks. So I think when you look at Monday's game, definitely the passing probably is what a lot of people zeroed in on. But defensively, he altered some possessions. You know, it's nice to see him again. These are all little things, minutiae things that you pull from a summer league game. But, you know, early on in the game, he was down in the crouch, down in his stance. He was able to switch out on guards. He was 2 for 9 from the floor, but he seemed really comfortable shooting that elbow jumper on the left side that we saw him take the 15-footer. Good from the free throw line. So I think all in all, for a first performance, 10 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, pretty good.
Now, Brian, they're out in Utah, and I know there's a lot of people from the organization. I don't know how many fans have traveled out for the Summer League games, but when he went down initially, Ben Simmons, was there like a could you hear a gasp? Could you hear a lot of people just like getting sucking their breath, sucking wind?
I think there's always, especially given the nature of the player, always when you see something like that, some initial concern. But he didn't seem like he was all that phased. And you could see he was kind of grabbing and clutching in and around the calf area earlier in the second half. So I think that everyone had a good sense of what it was all about. And it became pretty clear very quickly that it wasn't going to be anything major.
Okay, I'm sure a lot of heads popped up to, check out. A lot of people straining their neck to see exactly what was going on. But that's pretty scary, like Mike said.
Yeah, but it was, again, I think yesterday we had a chance to speak with him, and he was dwelling mostly on the actual game on Monday night, and he seemed like he was pretty much on track and good to go, learned his lesson, drink a lot of fluids, stay. This dry air out here in Salt Lake City, it's, even getting out of bed in the morning, not that anyone really wants to know this, but got out of bed this morning, I got a cramp in my left calf, and I'm still feeling right now walking around.
Must be the altitude. It could be the altitude out there in Utah. Brian Seltzer, Sixers.
That's a factor. The Sixers came out here a couple days early just because of that, pretty much to get used to it. A lot of people think of Denver as being a high-altitude place, but it's definitely an advantage that Utah has here in Salt Lake.
Brian Seltzer, Sixers.com. Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, they play the Jazz. Ben Simmons seems very grounded. Like, here's a guy who has been the number one pick in terms of the hype for almost a full calendar year. He never really lost grasp of that. It was always Simmons. There was a little Ingram maybe towards the end, but it was him for the most part. He goes through this college year. He's followed around. There's so much talk about this guy. He seems like a guy who's very even keel. Do you experience that in your conversations with him?
To me, one of the most amazing things has just been, even going back to the day after the draft, he had gone through so many interviews, not just up in New York City, but in Philadelphia. There was about a dozen different media stations following his 20-plus minute press conference where he did one-on-one interviews, and he was still willing to do stuff after that. He has seemed to be nothing but appreciative and gracious with his time. He's got, as you were just talking about, like, He's got like a nice demeanor about him. Seems like he's got a bounce to his personality. Smiles a lot. And the biggest thing was after he finished up his first practice with the Sixers on Sunday morning, they had their second two-a-day over at Utah's campus. It was like smiles from ear to ear, and you could just tell how much he really loved being a part of a team, a family, he called it, loved being on the court, and just how much he enjoys the game.
Brian, we know Ben gets so much attention. What has stood out about some of the other guys? You know, TJ is now in his second year. I think Wood had a good game the other night. He's an interesting had some interesting potential. Who are some of the guys that you're intrigued by?
Well, let's start. You mentioned some of the returning players. TJ had 7 assists on Monday. Rashawn Holmes came in and was a definite two-way presence, had 5 block shots. Wood, 20 points on Monday, 19 yesterday. He's shown a little bit from outside the arc, which has been intriguing to see. He did not really have that as a part of his game last year, at least when he was up with the Sixers. He's put on about 15 pounds, weighs roughly 235. So I think all those guys, they've been around PCOM a lot over the last 2 months, and the work you can see has paid off, at least in summer league competition. Timothy Luau-Cabarro has a personality, not just off the court, but on the court. Showed an ability to shoot it from the outside. He had 2 threes on Monday. He had that great finish when Simmons set him up. So I think those are immediate impressions. As for some of the other undrafted invitees to the Summer League roster, James Webb looks like he's got some game out of Boise State. He was active on the offensive glass in yesterday's loss to the Spurs. He's 2 for 10 from outside the arc, but I think when he can get his feet set, it looks like it's a very comfortable shot for him. So I think that's just there. We haven't really seen the shot fall yet. Just trying to think of some other immediate impression guys. I've liked Mato Lowe out of Columbia. Stepped up down the stretch in yesterday's game. A very heady player that, again, has some good athleticism and bounce. So I think there's some intriguing guys. And you got to keep in mind, the Sixers are one of the NBA teams that have this one-to-one affiliation with a development league affiliate down in Delaware. So I think that for as much as, you know, they want to get an extra look at some of the guys now, keeping that in back of mind is probably something that maybe we could see play out in the coming weeks, maybe after training camp.
Brian, do you see Simmons getting some time as a true point guard this year? I know Brett has said, you know, I don't know, we might ease him in, but after watching him, I know it's very small sample size, but do you look at him and say, yeah, this guy has the instincts, he's got the anticipation to play that position? Because he is a big guy.
Yeah, but his instincts, as you said, that was something that was clear from just one Summer League game. But I think that asking him to take on that responsibility full-time, especially off the jump, as Brett has said, he thinks the point guard is the most difficult position to play out of the 5 in the NBA. So that might be a lot to take on. But, again, it would not surprise me if we saw situations where Simmons is the primary ball handler. It sounds like, based on what Brian Colangelo said publicly, the Sixers are looking for backcourt contributors to pair up well with that part of Simmons' skill set. So while it may not be a full-time, all-the-time type deal, the Sixers definitely seem like they want to take advantage of that part of what Simmons brings to the court.
He's Brian Seltzer, Sixers.com. Are you calling the audio portion for Sixers.com tomorrow night?
Fingers crossed, as long as technology and our Ethernet connection works, we'll have every single one of the Summer League games, not just here in Utah, but in Las Vegas as well, the rest of the way on the website.
Very good. I actually switched over to there at one point. I was tired of hearing the mispronunciation of names on the television version, and Brian did a great job. Listen to that at Sixers.com for the Sixers and the Jazz, and then they go to Vegas next week. All right, buddy. Enjoy your high altitude out there.
All right, you guys. Thanks so much.